Isabella Tran froze mid-polish as billionaire CEO Daniel Cross waved a Mandarin document above his head in front of his executive boardroom. "Whoever can translate this gets my salary for the day, $27,400, he said with a half-smirk, nudging Isabella's cleaning cart out of the way with his Italian leather shoe. Laughter erupted around the long glass-topped table. She kept her eyes on the mahogany wood she was polishing, rubbing in slow circular motions, as if staying focused on the grain could keep her from reacting to the sting. "Why don't we just use Google Translate?" Mark Ellis, VP of Global Strategy, joked as he adjusted his tie, the Harvard ring on his finger clinking against his water glass. More reliable than whatever discount freelancers we'd probably find. Isabella's phone buzzed in her pocket. A reminder. 72 hours until the court hearing. 72 hours until the eviction notice became reality. She clenched her jaw. $27,000, exactly what she needed to cover the back rent, hospital bills, and legal fees that were pushing her and her mother to the edge of homelessness. Her fingers brushed the smooth edges of the small green pen in her apron pocket, her father's jade translator's pen. A final gift. A secret. A skill honed in silence. Would revealing that skill now save her or only invite new humiliation? Would the same people who ignored her presence ridicule her if she dared to speak 15 years earlier she hadn't been invisible? At 8, she'd amazed teachers with her ability to switch effortlessly between Mandarin English and Vietnamese. Her mother, Lynn, had met her Dominican father, Manuel, while both were attending a language conference in Chicago. Their home had been filled with warmth books and code-switching conversations that danced across languages. Her father used to say words are bridges. Build them, and they'll carry you places no passport can. By 10, Isabella was translating conversations between her Chinese grandparents and her Dominican cousins at family reunions. For her 13th birthday, Manuel had gifted her the jade pen polished green with small carved characters that meant wisdom illuminates. When she held it, she remembered the faint scent of sandalwood from her father's study, the place they would sit for hours working through Chinese idioms, English grammar rules, and Vietnamese proverbs. 3 months later, Manuel was laid off without warning by the same company where she now mopped floors. Cross-Tech Solutions. The same company that discarded him after 15 years of building their Southeast Asian division. The restructuring had been quick and brutal. No more salary. No more health insurance. When Manuel's persistent cough turned out to be stage 4 lung cancer, there was no financial safety net to catch them. Medical bills crushed them. Rejection letters piled up. "I think Cross blacklisted me," he once whispered to Lynn, exhausted after another failed job interview. 6 months later, Isabella buried him. What remained was a pile of debt, a mother slowly breaking under the weight of grief and illness, and the jade pen she carried like both armor and anchor. Lynn had once been an engineer in Hanoi, but in the U.S., her credentials meant nothing. She scrubbed hotel bathrooms until the first stroke made one side of her body useless. Isabella dropped out of her senior year of high school and took every job she could find. At 23, her life was a carefully orchestrated blur, cleaning offices at Cross-Tech from 4 p.m. to midnight, caring for her mother until dawn, sleeping 3 hours, and then working under a pseudonym Lingua Bridge as a freelance translator online. It paid better than janitorial work, but it was unstable, and she couldn't risk losing the meager healthcare plan tied to her cleaning job. Her weeks ran like equations of survival: $200 for rent, $475 for her mother's prescriptions, $260 for hospital bills, $185 for groceries, $140 for utilities. Every dollar had a destination. There was no room for error, no safety net, She had walked these same corporate hallways for 5 years, wiping fingerprints off glass walls while overhearing billion-dollar conversations. Her trilingual fluency transformed background noise into insight. She knew which executives were inflating numbers. She knew who stole ideas. She knew who called themselves diversity champions in boardrooms, but slashed hourly workers' pay in private. And now she knew this, that a Mandarin contract had just arrived from Huanlong Microtech, a Chinese semiconductor company known for its ruthlessness and precision. She'd caught a glimpse of the logo when it landed on Cross's desk at 10:17 a.m. on Friday. By noon, the executive floor buzzed with tension. Their entire translation department was unreachable vacation conferences, time zone delays. Daniel Cross was fuming. "This deal could double our market share in Asia," he barked, holding the document. But Huanlong sent it in Mandarin. "They want a response in 72 hours, or they take it to Samsung." Someone suggested an outside service. Cross scoffed. "You want our proprietary specs leaked to every competitor." He slammed the document on the conference table. "Translate this accurately by Monday morning, and I'll pay you what I make in a day. That's 27 grand. If anyone here is up for it, including the janitorial staff step-up." Laughter again. Mark Ellis turned toward Isabella. "Maybe even the cleaning girl wants a shot." Isabella said nothing, but her hand tightened around her cloth. She lingered longer than her shift required, pretending to polish the already gleaming credenza, listening as executives failed to translate even the title correctly. The document wasn't about partnership opportunities. It was about exclusive manufacturing authorization. A subtle difference, but a massive one in international trade law. And that deadline, 72 hours, it was the exact same amount of time she had left before she and her mother would be evicted. She didn't have time for pride or fear. But she couldn't risk being seen, not yet. Not in a world where showing intelligence as a maid could get her labeled insubordinate. She had seen what happened to others who dared to speak above their rank. At 1:43 a.m., standing in the glow of her apartment's kitchenette light, she made her decision. She wouldn't reveal herself. Not directly. Not yet. Instead, she would test the waters. See what her knowledge was worth to people who had never cared to know her name. Saturday night, Isabella returned to Crosstech dressed in her usual Navy cleaning uniform. It was the perfect disguise for after-hours access. The security guard at the front desk barely looked up as she swiped her badge. "Weekend shift, Isabella?" he asked, munching on pretzels. She smiled faintly, faking a thicker accent than she actually had. "See, my mama needs medicine. Extra hours help." The elevator chimed softly as she ascended to the executive floor. The place was empty save for the low hum of overhead lights. In the boardroom, half-translated pages were scattered across the whiteboard, sloppy handwriting, inconsistent terminology, phrases like fluid people model, where the actual term was thermal flow modeling. She flinched at the sloppiness. They had no idea what they were doing. From her apron, she pulled the jade pen. Slowly, methodically, she corrected 3 key sections on the whiteboard, enough to guide, not to solve. Just a test. At the bottom, she scrawled 2 words, night owl. By Sunday morning, the office was buzzing. She arrived early, pushing her cart, ears perked. "Who the hell is Night Owl Cross?" barked. "No unauthorized entries, sir," one manager said. Security confirmed it. "Someone on our team, then," Mark Ellis muttered. She watched through the crack in the door as Ellis stared at the board with narrowed eyes. Then, without hesitation, he erased her signature and turned to the CEO. "I did this part," he said coolly. "Didn't want to say anything before, but I've been studying Mandarin privately." Cross clapped him on the back. Finally, someone showing initiative. You're leading this. Isabella's breath caught. Her quiet rebellion gone, her efforts stolen. And yet she couldn't afford to burn with indignation. Not with 60 hours left before the eviction, her mother's health worsening, and no money left for medication. That night, she returned home to find her mother asleep on the sofa, free lines, hanging off a borrowed hospital stand, her breathing uneven. Isabella pulled out the photos she'd taken of the contract pages and laid them across their kitchen table. Her fingers worked tirelessly, line by line, character by character. Then she saw it. Buried in the technical language was a clause about workforce optimization. Innocent sounding. But it allowed for the laying off of over 300 workers at their manufacturing site. It was the same playbook that had destroyed her father's career. One of the families on that list, her cousins had only just started rebuilding after immigrating. Her hands trembled. Her eyes burned. She could finish this translation, let the deal go through, and get her money. Or she could stop it, speak up, and risk everything: her job, her mother's care, their home. Her phone buzzed with a message from her supervisor. New security rules. No after-hours access. Cleaning must be completed by 7 p.m. sharp. The window was closing. On Monday, she took desperate measures. During her lunch break, she locked herself in the supply closet, hunching over reams of paper, scribbling notes. She translated in bathroom stalls during short breaks, using tissue paper as scratch pads. She wrote in margins of empty boxes on the backs of old invoices on the inside of paper towel wrappers. By the end of her shift, she had translated nearly 40% of the document. She slipped a few more night owl notes onto the conference room whiteboard, carefully placed, then stood just beyond the doorframe listening. "Night owl's back," someone whispered. Ellis smirked. "I'll take care of this section too," he said smoothly, "since no one else can." He was stealing her work again, using it to climb higher. Each time he succeeded, he stole a rung of her escape ladder. But Isabella didn't have the luxury of confronting him. Not yet. Tuesday morning, everything changed. "We may have a breach," the security chief announced during the executive meeting. Someone accessed the boardroom after hours. Isabella was pouring coffee. She kept her expression blank. "We're reviewing badge swipes and camera footage. Could be corporate espionage," he added. "Start with the cleaning staff," Cross said flatly. Her heart jumped. By noon, security was questioning every janitor, including her. She sat across from the chief in the break room, shoulders hunched, speaking in broken English, playing the part she'd perfected. "No understand. I just clean." "No rid paper?" she said quietly, avoiding eye contact. He seemed satisfied. But Ellis wasn't. Later, he cornered her near the lockers, his eyes cold, predatory. "You understand me just fine when I give instructions," he said. She shrugged. Simple words. He leaned in. "I think you know a lot more than you're letting on." That evening, her worst fear came true. Her locker had been broken into, and the jade pen gone. She found Ellis waiting in the hallway, spinning the pen between his fingers. "Interesting little trinket," he said. "The characters mean wisdom, don't they give it back?" She said, voice tight. "I've already filed a report. Unauthorized foreign objects. Could be considered spying tools." The next morning, HR issued her a formal warning. Possession of suspicious materials, they said. Uncooperative behavior during an active investigation. Her world unraveled. Her anchor gone. Her reputation tarnished. The eviction 34 hours away. Her mother had a cardiac episode that night. The ambulance copay wiped out their remaining cash. The landlord posted a final warning. 24 hours until they changed the locks. She was being buried alive. And still she translated. During lunch Tuesday, she accessed Ellis's laptop while he was in a meeting. What she saw made her sick. He had deliberately mistranslated major clauses. His version of the proposal would violate international labor laws and potentially expose the company to fines and lawsuits. And no one noticed because he had credibility. Because she didn't exist. That afternoon, as she mopped the executive hallway, Ellis passed her, whispered low. "I know it's you." The translator. "I checked your file. Your mother, Lynn Tran, right immigration records say her visa expired years ago. Would be a shame if someone reported that." Isabella froze. "You're threatening me. I'm giving you a choice. Walk away, or I ruin both your lives." The emergency board meeting was scheduled for Thursday at 9 a.m., exactly 24 hours before the deadline with Huanlong Microtech. Isabella moved silently along the perimeter of the conference room, refilling coffee, adjusting napkins, invisible in her role as the help. But her eyes followed every chart Ellis pointed to on the projector. His voice filled the space with polished confidence, narrating the supposed benefits of the deal: lower manufacturing costs, exclusive production rights, and streamlined staffing efficiency. He glossed over everything she knew to be false. Words like streamlined hid massive layoffs. He skipped quality control protocols, ignored environmental standards, and when he tried to pronounce Liudong Moxing, a complex technical term, he butchered it beyond recognition. She flinched. Cross noticed. "Something wrong with the coffee girl?" he asked sharply. The room turned. Every eye locked onto her. Isabella straightened. The moment stretched long and taut. Her heart pounded, but her voice was steady. "Liudong Moxing," she said, her pronunciation fluid natural. It means fluid modeling system, not whatever he just said. Ellis blinked. "Excuse me." She didn't look away. "You mistranslated several sections, including this one. The document outlines technical requirements for thermal management, not staffing reallocations." "You don't know what you're talking about," he snapped. Cross raised a hand. "Do you speak Mandarin, Vietnamese, and English fluently?" Isabella replied, "Reading comprehension in Korean and Japanese. I've been a freelance translator for 6 years under the name Lingua Bridge." She pulled out her phone and showed him the profile over 400 verified technical and academic translations. Rating 4.98, specialization engineering and international business documents. Cross took the phone. He scrolled. The room was silent except for the faint hum of the projector fan. "My father," she continued, voice gaining strength, "was Manuel Tran. He built Cross-Tech's Southeast Asian division. He taught me everything. Your restructuring erased his name and left him to die uninsured." A flicker of recognition passed across Cross's face. Ellis scoffed. "She's just a janitor. This is some elaborate page 16, paragraph 4, Isabella interrupted. The contract states that within 60 days of signing, the company must reduce its production workforce by at least 300 positions. It's not a suggestion, it's a condition." She didn't break eye contact. I can recite the full passage if you want. Cross looked up from the phone. "Is this true?" he asked Ellis. Ellis turned red. That section was unclear. "I interpreted it as optional." "She's the one who's been leaving the night owl notes," another executive whispered. Ellis turned to her face, twisted. "You've been spying." "She's been helping," another voice chimed in. Cross held up a hand. "You claim you can translate the entire document accurately. By tomorrow morning, I've already done about 60%, she said. "I was helping in secret because I knew no one would believe me otherwise. Mr. Ellis has been taking credit for my work." The room buzzed with low murmurs. "I want it in writing," Isabella added. "Your original offer, $27,400. Paid upon delivery. I also want my pen back. The jade one Mr. Ellis confiscated. All eyes turned to Ellis, who slowly reached into his blazer pocket and produced the pen. And Isabella continued, surprising even herself. I want a signed agreement that I'll remain employed regardless of the translation's outcome. And a confidentiality clause protecting my mother's immigration status. The boardroom fell into a stunned silence. Cross stared at her. For the first time, not with disdain, but something closer to respect. Or at least calculation. Draw it up, he said to his assistant. Get her whatever she needs. By the time the agreement was signed and the pen was returned to her hand, Isabella felt its familiar weight settle her nerves. 18 hours. That was all she had. They gave her a small conference room, a backup laptop, and a stack of clean copies. She worked all night, the jade pen tucked between her fingers like a talisman. The characters flowed technical specifications, legal caveats, subtle cultural phrases that no machine translator could touch. By 3 a.m., she had translated 85%. But exhaustion crept in. Her vision blurred. The lines on the screen began to shift and dance. She rested her head on her arms just for a moment. She didn't hear him come in. Hot liquid splashed across her papers, her keyboard. She gasped and jumped up. Oops, Ellis said, holding an empty coffee cup, fake concern painted on his face. You look tired. I brought you something. Get away from me. He shrugged. Relax. I saved your work. Moved your files to my secure drive. Wouldn't want sensitive data falling into the wrong hands. He left before she could say a word. The laptop was dead. Her notes were soaked. 4 hours to deadline. 3 hours of translation lost. Her phone buzzed. It was the landlord. Eviction processor arriving tomorrow morning. Legal approved acceleration. She stared at the blinking cursor on the dead screen. Her mother was in the hospital. The rent was overdue. Her last hope was gone. She considered quitting, packing everything and walking out. Getting a cleaning job somewhere else. Somewhere they didn't know her name. Then her phone rang again. The hospital. Her mother needed emergency treatment. They required a deposit. Isabella opened her father's journal, the one she'd brought as a reference. Inside were his original notes on the GX500 chip, the same chip at the center of the Huanlong proposal. Hand-drawn diagrams, thermal models, annotated definitions. Everything she needed. She began again. Handwriting translations on clean pages, eyes wide open, fingers aching. The jade pen moved with purpose. She reconstructed clauses from memory-plugged gaps with the technical shorthand her father had once taught her over warm tea and classical Chinese music. At 8:47 a.m., Cross and the board entered the room. She looked up from her seat surrounded by papers stained with coffee and sweat, but not defeat. I expected this, Cross said. Housekeepers clean, executives execute. That's why I'm rich and you're right where you belong. He turned to his assistant. Draft the termination letter? Wait. He stopped. She reached into her bag and pulled out her father's journal. My dad worked on this technology before Huanlong acquired it. These are the specs, the notes, the original modeling designs, the thermal load thresholds, the trade-offs they left vague. She flipped open to a detailed diagram. You'll never find this in the proposal, but it's what makes the translation accurate. Cross studied the page. Then her. You have 10 minutes, he said. At 8:58, she stepped into the boardroom where the executives were gathered for the final video conference with Huanlong. She handed the completed translation to Cross, who glanced through it skeptically. The assistant announced, "Call is live." Actually, came a voice from the screen, we would prefer if Ms. Tran remained present. Everyone turned. On screen were the Huanlong executives and Mr. Han, her father's old colleague. Incredible, he said in Mandarin. Raphael's daughter. We heard someone had been translating accurately. Now we see why. Isabella bowed slightly. The honor is mine. She turned to Cross. They included certain ambiguities as a test. They wanted to see if your company retained the institutional knowledge you once had. That section on workforce layoffs, it was a character test. Cross looked at the screen. And did we pass? That depends, she replied. Ellis stepped forward, red-faced. She's manipulating the Isabella held up her phone. Security footage of you deleting my files, pouring coffee on my keyboard. It's all here. The board fell silent. Cross's jaw tightened. Mr. Ellis, you're fired. One of the Huanlong executives added, we'll proceed with the contract, but only if Miss Tran oversees implementation as our cultural liaison. She translated his words aloud. The room shifted. Power had changed hands. Cross hesitated, then nodded. Fine, she'll lead. As the call ended and the boardroom slowly emptied, Isabella stood still, the jade pen warm in her hand. Cross approached her, expression unreadable. It seems I underestimated you, he said. Many people do, she replied quietly. He pulled out a checkbook, wrote out the number, and handed it to her. $27,400. His daily salary, now hers. Our agreement stands, he said, though it seems you've earned far more than that. Later that afternoon, an email arrived from Huanlong's executive assistant. A wire transfer of $50,000 had been issued to Isabella Tran as a consultancy bonus in recognition of cultural precision and integrity under pressure. The total $77,400 was enough to stop the eviction pay for her mother's extended hospital care and buy them some time to breathe. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like she was treading water. 6 months later, Isabella sat behind a wide walnut desk on the 35th floor of Crosstech's headquarters, the city skyline spilling through the floor-to-ceiling windows behind her. Her name was etched in polished brass. On the door, Isabella Tran, Director of International Partnerships. The office was quiet, still scented with the orchid she kept on the corner of her desk, beside a photo of her father, smiling, his hand resting on her shoulder the day she turned 13. Her jade pen sat in a crystal holder beside it, no longer tucked in a pocket for protection, but displayed as a symbol of everything she'd reclaimed. Her first act as director had been the creation of the Raphael Tran Scholarship Fund, offering financial support for the children of hourly staff pursuing education. Her second, a company-wide audit of layoff policies and hiring procedures, followed by sweeping reforms to ensure equity. She also quietly rehired 14 factory workers who had been laid off just months before, and insisted that training materials be available in multiple languages for all new hires. The contract she translated led to a 32% increase in market share across Southeast Asia and a 24% improvement in employee retention. In board meetings, the same executives who once glanced through her now greeted her with Miss Tran. Even Cross, though not a changed man in principle, had grown to value her, not for moral reasons, but because she delivered results. In the last shareholders' meeting, he'd called her an unexpected asset with a uniquely valuable perspective. She knew what that meant. It meant she'd made him money. And that was fine, because her work had made lives better. As she organized her papers for the upcoming monthly board meeting, her assistant appeared at the door. Your mother's physical therapist called. She's improving faster than projected. Said she even asked about applying for recertification in engineering. Isabella smiled. Gracias, she said, allowing herself the small joy of using Spanish aloud, something she'd once hidden like a shameful secret in these halls. A soft chime reminded her of the meeting in 15 minutes. She gathered her materials, reports, slides, one photo of her father, folded neatly into her notebook. Before leaving, she paused at the small framed newspaper clipping by the window. The headline read, "Janitor turned executive helps cross-tech soar with Asian market deal." The article said nothing about how she'd been almost fired, about Ellis's sabotage, about the cost of visibility. But that was all right. The people who needed to know knew. What the article did mention was her new initiative, the Hidden Talents Program, an internal campaign encouraging all cross-tech employees to share their skills, degrees, and interests. Since its launch, 28 support staff had been promoted. A cafeteria worker who spoke 6 languages was now on the customer experience team. A security guard with a mechanical engineering degree from Nigeria had been moved to R&D. A receptionist who sketched product designs during lunch breaks now worked in the innovation lab. As for Ellis, word had spread. His sabotage went public. No major firm would hire him. The last Isabella had heard, he was teaching business communication at a local community college, ironically educating the very people he once dismissed. Cross remained fundamentally unchanged, driven by profit, not principles, but he had learned to value merit, even when it didn't come wrapped in a suit and tie. He still described Isabella's promotion as lightning in a bottle, rather than addressing the systemic barriers that kept her invisible. But his actions had shifted, if not his heart, then at least his behavior. And for now, that mattered more. As she walked toward the boardroom, colleagues greeted her in English, Mandarin, and Spanish. She answered each in kind. Every exchange, every smile, every eye contact was a small reclamation, a proof that she wasn't invisible anymore. Inside the boardroom, the executives rose when she entered. She sat plugged in her laptop and began her presentation, a strategy projected to create 450 new jobs across Asia and South America. She started with a slide showing a map of multilingual growth, then a chart of quarterly retention rates. Numbers that told a story. Her story. "Good morning," she said, first in English, then in Mandarin, then in Spanish. "Today I want to show you how embracing different perspectives can transform more than just corporate culture. It transforms outcomes." As she clicked through slides, the jade pen rested beside her notes. Not a relic of loss, but a declaration of presence. The room leaned in. "Talent doesn't always come in expected packages," she said. "But those who recognize it without prejudice gain an edge the world will never see coming." And with that, she began to lead the company into a future her father had only dreamed of, one bridge at a time.